Hello there guys, RMP792 here. So, Discovery. We're up to episode 4, I believe, of season 2 now. And yeah, this is significantly better than last week's episode. Much better, guys. Because last week I maintained the problem was that they had 4 plots that were competing for attention. This week they had 3 plots, but they were all tied into the central plot, i.e. Discovery encounters a weird wibbly-wobbly thing, it causes problems. So then you've got the main plot of how are we going to deal with it. We've got the subplot of it's causing Saru particular focused problems, and Tilly, Stamets, and the new engineer whose name I haven't learned yet end up getting stuck in the spore drive room, and the alien that they've got contained in there gets out and causes shenanigans. Which again is all tied back to the central thing of the wibbly-wobbly thing is causing it. So much, much better. It actually felt like a focused episode that was, again, 3 plots, but all interconnected and all tied together and working quite well together. So much, much better, guys. So we basically begin with, we get to see number 1 again. As I said, we haven't seen number 1 since The Cage, where she was played by Marjol Barrett. Who, of course, would later become, Mrs. Gene Roddenberry and, would play Nurse Chapel and Lwaxana Troi and all of the computer voices. I'm still kind of annoyed that they're not using her voice for the Discovery computers. And before anybody points out that she sadly passed away a while ago, she recorded her voice phonetically before she did that, with the express permission that if they made any more Star Trek, they could use those recordings to basically make her voice say anything they wanted for the purpose of the show. So, bit annoyed they're not using it. But oh well. But yes, so it was quite nice to see number 1 again, as I said. I quite like the fact that at no point does Pike mention her name in this. Because again, in The Cage, her name is never mentioned. She is just number 1. And over the years, I don't know if anybody's ever established her name. Even in Memory Alpha, I don't think it's ever given. That's the Star Trek wiki, if you're not aware. But yeah, to the best of my knowledge, her name has never been listed. And the fact that they didn't give it here, I sort of prefer that to the options of actually giving her a name. I mean, if you're going to give her a name, the obvious answer is give her, Marjol Barrett's first name or something like that, just, as a kind of nod to the original actress who played her, who, as I said, is sadly no longer with us. And, there's a reason why she's sometimes referred to in the community as the First Lady of Star Trek, because, she was Gene Roddenberry's, girlfriend during the, I can't remember when they got married. I think it was after TOS, but it was somewhere in that ballpark. And she's been involved in Star Trek in one form or another literally since its inception. So, I considering her the First Lady of Star Trek, I think is a good title as these things go. There's actually a reason why when she turned up on Babylon 5, she was playing the widow of the Centauri Empire. And that was, relatively speaking, the widow of the former Centauri Emperor. And, that was, relatively speaking, not long after Gene's death. So, again, that was very much a sign of respect for, from Babylon 5. For somebody who was very important to Star Trek history. So yeah, as I said, and honestly, Rebecca Romijn, I've never been entirely sure how you pronounce her surname. I probably should look it up at some point. But yeah, she was perfectly fine as number 1. Again, it's a fairly minor part. I'm hoping she turns up again in future. And they flat out state that, we think that the cock-up in the Enterprise was caused by the holographic communicators, and Pike's attitude is, bollocks to it, we're not using those. Just rip them out and we'll go back to using screens like normal people. So I think that's probably going to be their excuse for how come we've got all the holograms, and then later we get rid of them because, they're just unreliable until the tech's actually refined. And it's a cop-out, but honestly, given the way Starfleet operates, I could absolutely see them installing some new piece of technology they don't really understand, that doesn't work properly, that causes major problems and, end up having to rip it out later. Because, again, these are the people who built holodecks that malfunction and try to take over the ship, holodeck safety features that break very regularly, a starship that's got top-of-the-line, brand-new swanky systems that can be almost destroyed by cheese. Yes, that actually happened in an episode of Voyager. And, yes, and are constantly doing insane experiments that, the Enterprise has to come along and go, okay, so what killed everybody on this ship then? So yeah, I honestly can't believe Starfleet would do that. What can I say? I adore Star Trek, but Starfleet are kind of nuts. So yeah. After that, she gives them tracking information on Spock, which she had to, call in a couple of favors to ask. But they get effectively the warp signature of the shuttle that he stole, and they go hightailing after him. And yeah, if it's a shuttle, I'm willing to accept that it's a hell of a lot slower than they are. So the fact that they can catch it, I don't have a problem with. Unfortunately, they get pulled out of warp and into this weird stasis field around a sort of planety thing. It's bleeding huge, whatever it is, and it's. I'll freely admit the effects on that were really cool. I liked the design of that thing because it looked weird as hell. And frankly, when you're going for alien thing, weird as hell is a good design. And yeah, so that is just flat bizarre. We have no idea what the hell it is. They don't know what the hell it is. And of course, everything starts going wibbly after that. So at this point, the episode sort of breaks down into three main plots, but again, they do keep bleeding into each other. So we've got the, what is this thing? How can we stop what it's doing to us? Is it hostile? Is it, whatever? And then we've got the Saru plot, where, it's assumed that proximity to this thing is triggering something in him. And, and he seems to be very, very ill. And it's a while before he admits what's up with that. And lastly, as I said, we've got the Tilly Stamets and new engineer character, who I actually really like. I genuinely like somebody whose attitude is, yeah, screw you, I don't give a damn. And her interaction with Stamets is great. But I'll start with the main plot, then I'll talk about the other two plots. Because I'm one of those people who prefers to separate the plots out in their head rather than trying to do everything in chronological order in an episode like this. So, in the main plot, we've basically got the alien infects the ship with some sort of computer virus that goes for the universal translators. So we've got a humorous scene of everybody talking the wrong language, which I bet that was fun for the actors, having to talk about 50 different languages. And again, I complained about all the Klingon last season. This scene works fine because the entire point is nobody can understand each other. They're all, I appreciate they are not, but they are, to all intents and purposes, talking gibberish to each other. Because when one person is speaking French and the other person doesn't understand French, it might as well be gibberish. It's not effective as a means of communication in that situation. And that's equally true if I'm speaking English and I'm speaking to somebody who's never heard a word of English in their life. So that scene was actually quite amusing, and we have established previously that Saru, decided to teach himself, was it 70 odd, or it might have been 90 odd languages. I feel like it was either 73 or 93 or something like that. But yeah, Saru has taught himself a lot of languages, which means he can actually communicate with everybody. He can look at the control panels and be like, okay, that's the wrong language, and do everything. And he's able to purge the virus from the local translator so they can at least talk to each other again, which is quite useful. And he's kind of stumbling around a bit sick during this. So they basically say, okay, we're going to have to go through the ship and start purging systems and everything else, and they're fighting this computer virus. And I'll freely admit, at that point, I immediately said, it's trying to communicate with them. Because this is Star Trek. That was the obvious answer. That, if you're going to infect any system on a starship and it's the universal translator, that means it wants to talk to you. That's not an attack. That is, whoops, sorry, I'm overloading your systems. My apologies. So while I knew what the twist was going to be, that doesn't mean it didn't work. It was fine. again, it's a very Star Trek plot, and I'm perfectly okay with that. So that was, the main plot was more of a setting for the character stuff with Saru. I will be completely honest about that, and that's absolutely fine. So, of course, it eventually turns out that this thing has been around for God knows how long, and it's dying, and it wants someone to remember it. So they eventually manage to, purge enough of the systems that they're able to sort of safely get the information it's trying to send them, and then it dies. And its last act as it dies is to sort of use it, invert the polarity of its stasis beam, or technobabble, and push them away, so that they're able to survive the explosion when it dies. And again, that's very, very Star Trek. I like that. And, it's we got all the data it was trying to send us, and I'm just sitting there going, okay, either you guys have got some bitching good data compression, or you've got frigging massive hard drives. But, for 10,000 years worth of data. But then again, that far in the future, I'm assuming they've got insanely good hard drives, so, maybe. But, yes, and Pike's comment is, yes, Starfleet scientists are going to be decrypting this for centuries. Which, yeah, I'm perfectly okay with that. Again, long-term research project, a kind of a Starfleet thing. Get some Vulcans on it. They live for a long-ass time. So that's... it's a fairly basic, find the weird thing, understand the weird thing is dying, it wants us to remember it. It's a fairly basic plot, but it works. It's very, very Star Trek. If you've not seen much Star Trek before, you might not realise, the twist. Again, I found it very obvious, but that's because I'm a massive nerd. I figured that had to be coming. Then we get into the more interesting aspect of the episode, which is the Saru plot. So, the first time we see Saru in the episode, he's sort of sneezing and a bit hunched over, and and he's asking somebody to pass the salt because clearly the Kelpian equivalent of a cold, something that helps is very, very salty water, or whatever whatever the liquid he was putting the salt into was. And basically what transpires is that the reason he's so sick is that the proximity of this thing, whatever it is, has triggered effectively his final illness. And his comment is basically, when Kelpians get to a certain point of development, a certain age, their threat ganglia at the back become inflamed, and again, the makeup effects on that, where they're really protruding out of his head, a hell of a way, were actually pretty good. The makeup on Saru has been fantastic, and there's a scene in this episode, a couple of scenes towards the end, where he's actually shirtless, and again, the makeup on that is stellar. Doug Jones has always been one of those actors who's perfectly comfortable and perfectly happy to get in absolute crap tons of makeup, and again, excellent work, Discovery's makeup team. You deserve some sort of award. I don't know what. I can't remember what the makeup awards are for TV, but whatever they are, you deserve them. That was stellar work. Well done. But yeah, so Saru basically believes he's dying, and he states that when this happens on their homeworld, that's a sign that they're ready for harvesting, to all intents and purposes. And if you've seen the Saru short, because they did 4, I think they call them mini treks, one of them is about Saru. Again, it's about 15, 20 minutes long, something like that. And it's basically Saru and his home planet, and there's some sort of weird monolithy looking thing in the centre, and when their time comes, they basically sacrifice themselves to it. So I guarantee you there's some alien species out there eating them. Because, for some reason, Discovery seems to like, the whole we're going to eat Kelpians thing. Somebody in the Discovery writing team's kind of screwed up, I think. In fact, I was actually reading an article about the whole eating aliens thing. But anyway. But yes, and if they don't, they basically go completely insane and homicidal, and they have to be put down forcibly. So he basically thinks that his time has come. So he wants to do this one last thing and save the ship and do his job in Starfleet. And then he wants Burnham's help to help him die. And what that basically means is, they have to cut off his threat ganglia, and that will, in some way, kill him. I'm assuming it's basically sort of massive, massive trauma in that regard. It's like carving out, carving out your eyes with no anesthetic or something like that. It's basically so incredibly traumatic and painful that it's enough that it kills you. Which is not the way you want to go, really, but oh well. And the scene with Saru and Michael is really good. It's let down by the fact that I knew he wasn't going to die. And that wasn't from reading ahead or any knowledge like that. It's just Saru is too important a character for them to kill him like this. So I knew on a conscious level that Saru was not going to die, and that stopped the scene having the emotional weight I think it was going for. But that's not really the fault of the writers, or for that matter, the actors. The actors, in particular, Doug Jones, were just acting the crap out of this scene. It was a good scene. But again, it lost something for the fact that I knew he wasn't going to die. But yeah, so when she actually goes to to cut off his threat ganglia, they actually just flat fall out. She barely touches them, and Saru suddenly starts feeling way better. He feels better, and more importantly, he's no longer got that constant sense of fear and anxiety that's always been hanging over him. Which probably means, and this is me theorizing here, the species that's been harvesting them, I guarantee you they harvest them at that point before they start getting uppity. Because we've seen from the episode where Saru's in the Weird Forest that he's bloody strong by human standards. And humans are roughly galactic norm. We see Kirk win enough fistfights with aliens to assume that humans are comparable physically to most other non-human species. Same in DS9. We see humans go toe-to-toe with Jem'Hadar in melee combat. And the Jem'Hadar are meant to be bred for war. So, the fact that humans can defeat them in hand-to-hand shows that we are comparable to other alien species in that regard. We've got the Vulcans who are a bit stronger, and we've seen other species who are a bit stronger, but then they tend not to be ridiculously stronger, and this goes for Saru as well. He's strong enough to pick up somebody and throw them, pick them up by the throat and chuck them. But again, a human can reach that level of physical strength if they're willing to work ridiculously hard at it. My noodly muscles could not do that. But if I spent the next 5 years at the gym with a proper workout routine and protein intake and God knows what else, I could get to the point where I can lift a guy up by one hand and chuck him. But yes, I suspect they've deliberately kept Saru... So presumably this is effectively the next stage of growing up for a Kelpian. So I don't really want to say puberty because because obviously the Kelpians can reproduce. So it's clearly not that. And the only other human equivalent I could really think of would be menopause. But again, that's a late in life thing rather than a next stage of maturity thing. So I don't think there's a direct human equivalent, but I'm perfectly okay with that. Maybe you could think of it, I don't know, as chrysalis into a butterfly. But again, that feels wrong. But again, the fact there isn't really a direct human or animal comparison that I can think of is an alien. That's fine. There doesn't have to be a direct comparison. So it's going to be interesting what they do with Saru's character from here, given that he's no longer got that constant, overwhelming sense of fear and dread that's kind of been his defining characteristic. And I'm really curious to see where they go with it. I suspect he's going to become a bit hot-headed and impulsive and kind of aggressive for a while until he learns to rein it the hell in. But yeah, I'm curious to see where they go with that. That could be very interesting. And then lastly, we have the three. I was going to say Musketeers, and then my brain went to Migos instead. The trio stuck in the Spore Drive room, and they do actually mention that this ship has a main engineering that we've just never seen. Yay! So, So the three of them basically get trapped inside the spore room when things go wobbly. And of course, the creature gets out and starts, attaching itself to Tilly again, and it communicates with Stamets and basically says that every time Discovery jumps through the mycelial network, it's bollocking things up, and he needs to bloody stop it. We figured out, we knew there'd have to be a reason why they can't use the damn spore drive. I would have been perfectly fine with it just being, we have to genetically modify our pilots and we're not allowed to do that. Or even, we've run out of spores and we have nowhere to get more. But, at the end of the day, you're bollocking up this other creature's environment. You need to stop it, you dingbat. I'm okay with that being the reason. It's a bit trite, it's a bit predictable, but it works, is what I will say. But honestly, and then it sort of spreads over. Tilly and Cocoons her, and they have to cut her out, and they get her out, and then they all start getting a bit trippy because there's weird spores in the air, and then Tilly sort of vanishes, and the assumption is she's been in some way sort of pulled into the network through the spore creature or something like that. So we don't know what's really going on here. My theory is that it actually started dosing them before they even cut her out, and then they never actually cut her out. They were hallucinating that. Which would make more sense than what we actually see happen. But we don't know. Again, we'll have to wait for the next episode to find out. But the thing I liked about this sequence is that those three actually have quite good byplay. In particular, I quite like the slightly, I don't take no shit attitude of the new engineer character, who, again, I will find out what she's called at some point. Because her and Stamets' reaction and relationship to each other reminded me a lot of the one between Malcolm and Major Hayes in Enterprise. I.e., these two are either going to beat the shit out of each other or become lifelong friends. Most likely the first one and then the second one. Because, again, Major Hayes and Malcolm on Enterprise butted heads for, a good half season, maybe a little more. And then eventually they beat the tar out of each other. Then there was a red alert while they were sort of, oh, come on, we're still doing this fight. And then there was a red alert and they had to run to their stations and do their jobs. And then they got a yelling out from the captain, I don't want this to happen again. And they sort of looked at each other and goes, no, it's not going to happen again. So... Because again, some people are just dumbasses who need to beat the tar out of each other in order to actually respect each other. And so I actually really quite like that relationship and that byplay. If it wasn't for the fact that Stamets is firmly established as being gay, I would assume they were planning a sort of slightly antagonistic romance. I'm really hoping they don't go that direction. And as I said, given that they've been quite smug about the fact that Stamets is the first gay main character on Star Trek, I'm hoping they don't go that direction. I mean, to be fair, he could be bi. And again, we don't get that many bi characters on TV. But frankly, that would just feel like an obvious direction for that relationship to go in, and I kind of don't want it to go that way. Because again, I've seen that too many times. I'm very happy with them being slightly antagonistic friends in kind of the same way that Bones and Spock were, in that they have kind of very different viewpoints, but they're still absolutely friends. They're just friends who will happily take the piss out of each other and insult each other in a way that they know isn't actually going to hurt the other one's feelings in any real way. Let's face it, when McCoy calls Spock a green-blooded hobgoblin, if he actually thought that Spock was taking any offence at that, he wouldn't say it. It's very much like my own grandfather basically greeted everybody he genuinely liked by insulting them. And if he thought they didn't find the insults amusing, he wouldn't say it. Because at the end of the day, he wasn't trying to hurt them or anything. That was just his way of being friendly. And everybody he did that to knew that and was perfectly okay with it. So you can get some interesting things there. So overall, this was a significant improvement on last week. Largely because, again, everything was a lot more focused. It was, it had a lot of good character moments in it. and the overall plot just felt very, very Star Trek to me. So yeah, much better episode than last week. Looking forward to the next one. Still kind of hate the Spock subplot, but oh well, let's go with it. And yeah, that's kind of all I've got on this one. So yeah, good episode. Keep it up, Discovery.